Janusz is he's a Polish officer, and you know, like many soldiers at that time and many civilians at that time, was captured by the Soviet Red Army, and they were tortured into declaring themselves kind of enemies of the people. And in Janusz's case, it was actually his wife who was so brutally tortured, she was then forced to sign a confession, giving evidence that, you know, the man that she loves, her husband, is actually a spy against the Soviets, and, you know, then sort of sealed his fate into sending him to be imprisoned in one of the harshest, most grueling gulag labor camps in the depths of Siberia. So that's his situation, and the film sort of really is about Janusz's drive to escape from the camp and just to get home to his wife, to sort of forgive her for what she's done, because I guess deep down he knows that the sort of mental torment and the torture that she'll be going through and the guilt that she's feeling about what she was forced to do is far greater than any physical pain that he could kind of endure. I could feel the ghosts of all the stories that I'd read about these prisoners and about what went on in these camps, even within our set, in exactly the same way as I did as I walked through the gates of Auschwitz. So, you know, Peter had just done an amazing job just creating the reality for us, and it was just a case of sort of reacting to what was sort of thrown at us. And a lot of the film was like that, really. There was a lot of just being present, you know, in the world that was surrounding us, in these incredible landscapes, in these difficult, you know, this difficult terrain, or this blistering heat on these sand dunes. It was just a case of just being, you know, not a lot of acting was required when you have to pretend to be cold and it's freezing cold outside, you know. So that was really special, just having to just be present, really. I think the most important bit of research that I did, which was way before we started filming, was that I was able to get in touch with prisoners, Polish prisoners who are still alive today. And you know, one guy, a guy called Henrik in particular, who I went to his house. He lives here in England now, and I sat there with him and his wife and his son, and he told me, you know, his story, and that was definitely when I realized, like, I mean, I think before that, everything I'd thought of just felt like so long ago. You know, you had all these black and white photographs, these grainy sort of pictures that just was of another time in my mind, you know. So to sit there with this incredible man, tell me his life story, who didn't look that old to me. I mean, I was just, it really hit me like straight to the heart. I just couldn't believe that this didn't happen that long ago. This man's still alive, and he still has his story to tell. It was just like nothing I'd ever sort of experienced. And I mean, it was, like I said, I mean, every day you were up against some kind of, you know, challenge, against some kind of element, whether that was just dealing with the freezing cold and doing night shoots in the mountains of Bulgaria. And then we all dreamed of getting to Morocco, where it would be nice and warm, but of course it was just, you know, so blisteringly hot that for me it was actually harder filming in Morocco than it was filming in Bulgaria. I actually dealt with the cold better than I did the heat. You know, and Peter insisted that we all had to carry all our clothing and all our possessions, because one thing he'd been taught by a survival expert is that you never leave anything behind, because you never know when you might need it again, so you use what you have in certain ways. So we were trekking through, you know, the desert with all our army clothing. You know, I had this huge kind of officer's coat that I had to sort of take with me wherever I went, and you know, these big boots, and you know, but we started to improvise with the clothing on how that could then help us in the environment that we're in. So of course the big jacket became a great sun protector and became almost like a tent, you know. It was definitely one of the most exhilarating things I've ever done. It was definitely one of the most exhausting things I've ever done. You know, it's the coldest I've ever been and the hottest I've ever been. I was put in some of the most confined spaces that I've ever been in, and seen some of the most vast open landscapes I've ever seen. So, you know, it definitely felt more than just making a film. You know, it was a all-out life-changing experience for me, definitely. So she came into the film a couple of weeks later because she wasn't involved in the Gulag prison camp. You know, and she didn't escape from the camp. We find her later on in the film. And just as she does as her character, as a person, you know, she just kind of was a breath of fresh air. You know, there were all these men hanging around, and suddenly this young girl, this hilarious sort of young, youthful sort of spirit sort of came into all of our lives, and you know, and really sort of woke us all up really, and we just had such a good time. You know, sort of looking after her in a way and just playing with her, and we came up with all these mad games of like sticks and stones, and would sing these stupid songs that she would invent, and we'd all get involved in it, and we all allowed ourselves to get involved in that. Even though we were going through a grueling time, it was important that, you know, we kept our sort of spirits high by sort of, you know, enjoying Saoirse's youth, I guess. And yeah, it was amazing to see the reality play out in exactly the same way as it does in the film and in the story.